Hey pioneers! So this Monday, for Women's Month, I wanted to talk to you guys about guilt and shame. As women, historically, we have had to experience a lot of guilt and shame, especially at the hands of the patriarchy, right? There's so many different like societal standards of what it means to be a woman, what it looks like to be a woman, and then especially once you break it down into races and ethnicities, astronomical. The amount of guilt and shame that's placed on us to look the best, to act the best, to be the best wife, mother, human being. And there's no like actual consensus. There's no normality. And that's the messed up part about it to me is it's just like people have this standard, but then there's also like seven other standards and they all like conflict and like contradict each other. And so it's just like, so how am I supposed to be a woman if there's no consensus? And my answer is A, God, and B, whatever you choose for it to be. So the difference between guilt and shame, because I think it's important, is guilt is more of I did something bad, and shame is I am bad, and that's what Brene Brown says. So I definitely recommend you guys reading The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. That book has helped me in so many different areas of my life, definitely in understanding myself. And for me, guilt and shame kind of went hand in hand. So whenever I felt like I did something bad, I felt like that meant that I was bad as a person. I felt like people who are bad do bad things and people who are good do good things. So if I'm doing bad things, then that must mean I'm a bad person. Child logic, don't know. So it took a really long time for me to like unravel that and understand that just because I sometimes do bad things doesn't mean that I am just inherently a bad person and I'm not worthy of love. But I swear to you, those two were linked for a good 20 plus years. And I'm just like, yep, I can't be worthy of love because I'm a bad person because I do bad things. Y'all, I feel like the bad things that I did was just like, disrupting the class, not following directions, being insubordinate, getting written up almost every single day, like simple stuff. And I think for me, because I felt like I didn't know how to control it, honestly, truthfully, and everybody was expecting for me to control it, and I'm just like, I don't know, like you're not teaching me how this is supposed to look like, you're just telling me don't do it, and I'm just like, I don't know how to not talk. Like, what do you mean? Like, I talk too much all the time. It's who I am. Like, so teach me how to not do that. So I didn't have that model. So I'm just like, well, since I don't know how to do this, I'm clearly a bad person. Like, this is it. I'm a bad person. There's no redemption here. And I feel like it took a pivotal moment for me of like sitting down and like really being negative. Like I was saturated in negativity because I was just like, I'm a bad person. I just look at these decisions that I make. I'm always making the worst decisions. I'm always choosing to chase after people who clearly don't care about me. Like, what am I doing wrong and how do I stop this? And it just kept swirling until I stopped, and I was just like, the only reason I think I'm a bad person is because I tell myself I'm a bad person on a consistent basis. Has anybody else looked at me and been like, Jasmine, you're a bad person? Couldn't find it. Now, have there been like, what's that word? Is it covert or overt? Covert, because overt is obvious. So there were covert like things where I felt like people were saying I had like negative attributes, but nobody just outright said I was a bad person. So then of course I'm going to the Bible and I'm just like, well, what does God say? He made male and female in his image and it was good. And I'm like, oh. So I'm really over here like beating myself up about the past too, because it's like after I stopped getting written up in elementary school, I didn't really get written up that much after that. I was on the straight and narrow. So I was really just basing a lot of like me feel my guilt and shame of like feeling bad on like past, like stuff that I don't even know who I was as a child. So it's like, oh, I'm really over here like doing that. And that's what we do though. It's just like, remember that thing you did like 7 years ago? Yep, you're a bad person. And it's just like, okay, but you're not that person anymore. That was 7 years ago. Girl, your cells done regenerated since then. Like, you theoretically are a whole nother person because your cells have all replaced themselves. Like, but of course, we're our toughest critic. We're hard on ourselves because we expect to be good. And that's okay. Like, we do expect to be good. We should expect to be good. I want to be a good person, but I have to, and we have to, as a collective humanity, understand that this like strict dichotomy of good and bad is not as strict as we think it is. Like, you can be a good person and make bad choices. You can be a bad person and make good choices. Like, that doesn't necessarily dictate who you are as a person, but also too, you make that choice at the end of the day. And I think we give that power to other people. Like I was saying in my jealousy video, like, we give that power to other people of like, tell me what I am, tell me that I'm good. And it's just like, do you think you're good? Do you believe you're good? And do you act as if you're good? Because what you believe and what you think about yourself is how your actions are going to display themselves. If you think you're a bad person, you're going to act like you're a bad person because that's what you believe. If you think you're a good person, you're going to act like you're a good person because that's what you believe. What you believe has the power to make or break you, literally. And I spent over 2 decades, trying to break myself to be whatever version of, I don't even know what version of myself I was trying to be, instead of just embracing the fact that who I am. I make poor life decisions on a sometimes daily basis, like at this point. Like, let's just be honest, call a spade a spade. I don't always make the best decisions. I don't always do what I'm supposed to do. Sometimes I mess up. Sometimes I don't call people back. Sometimes I don't answer the phone. Like, I'm not perfect. And we get so caught up in, oh, we have to be perfect because that's what society tells us to be. Like, as a whole collective, all of us, it's like, you got to be perfect. No, we don't. We just have to be here. We just have to show up and we just have to try and be ourselves. Guilt and shame can put us in chains, can make us feel like there is no way out and there's nothing impossible. But when we step back, which is really hard to do, I know I'm not saying this is an easy process. When we step back, we realize all we have to do is break the chains ourselves. We don't have to allow the chains to destroy us, to keep us down and to hold us. And the thing about that too is that one of the biggest ways that the guilt and shame is effective is when we don't talk to other people. Because it's like, I'll literally have moments where I'm just like, this is me. I'm going crazy. This is nobody else. And I talk to somebody and they're like, oh girl, no, I left my baby in the car seat in the car for 0.5 seconds too. And I'm just like, oh, I'm not alone. Disclaimer, I obviously don't have kids and I haven't done that, but no, you're not alone. And especially motherhood. I know that there's so much guilt and shame associated with that because people are going to tell you their opinion about you being a mother up and down through Sunday. And it's just like, why? It's already, there's no instruction manual, contrary to popular belief, that comes with being a human being. And that also includes raising a human being, bringing another human being into this world. And so people are going to tell you many different ways of how to do it, obviously. But that's their opinion. And the thing about it too is that, like, when people have their opinions about that, it's like, okay, but you turned out like this. So like, should I really take your advice? But of course we're so saturated in our own guilt and shame and beating ourselves up about, well, oh no, like I let my baby cry for 30 minutes. This is so terrible. Like, I'm a bad mom. Because Susie told you at the supermarket, every time my baby cry, I pick my baby up. And it's just like, okay, Susie, that works for you and your household, but that don't mean it work for me and my household. Like, and that baby gonna be okay. The baby's gonna be okay. I promise. But we have got to stop being so heavily dependent on the opinion of others. And easier said than done. I'm not saying you could just blink and be like, okay, Jasmine, yeah, that's great. But it comes from listening to yourself, trusting your own intuition, and also looking at the path of what you went down. Because there's certain things that, like, my mom did that I don't want to do with my kids. I don't want to physically discipline my kids unless I absolutely have to, unless it's just like I somehow procreated and made the spawn of Satan. Then I'm just like, yep, you got to get beat. Other than that, that's not necessarily what I want to do because I don't think it was actually effective for me. I don't think, until I could honestly, consciously understand, like, the way the things were, like, my fault that I was doing, you can whoop me all you want to, take things away all you want. Like, it's because I didn't understand it. So it's like, you know how most people's like cause and effect? I was just like, cause. That's it. Cause. No, or was it effect? I was like, effect. This is an effect that's happening. I don't know what the cause is, but it's effect. I keep getting whoopings. I don't know what's happening. That's my story. That's my experience. But talking about these things with people, like being open and honest with yourself, and I mean, knowing too that that's a moment where I could have made a better decision, but I didn't. That's okay. You're not supposed to make the best decision at every single moment of every single day. Contrary to popular belief, yet again, you don't, you won't, you're gonna fail because we're humans, because we're flawed, because we're not perfect. Nobody needs for you to be perfect. Because guess what? Perfection, anyways. Jesus was the only one that was perfect, and Jesus was the example. So anything beyond that is just like you could be like the example, but you're gonna fall short, and that's where he comes in. That's why he's necessary. Is because we are not perfect. We are flawed, and we shouldn't expect each other to get it right 100,000%. Like when my friends like fall short of things, I'm not just like, wow, you stupid, stupid trash. But it's like it happens. Grace. Oh, and grace is one of the saving things of guilt and shame. Give yourself some grace to be tired, to not want to not be motivated, to have your feelings, to be depressed, to be anxious, to make poor life decisions, not intentionally. Just to be clear, not intentionally. We'll get on that later, but give yourself some grace. It's okay that you're not perfect, even if you want to be. It's okay. You're not. I'm not. We're not as a species. I feel like coronavirus made that very clear. Our responses as a whole and individually have made that very clear. But it's okay. And also don't be so caught up in like getting things right the first time or the second time or the third time, because sometimes you won't. Shoot, I'm 26 and I still don't know what I'm doing out here. Like, it is what it is. And I could very easily just be myself about it and be like, oh, well, you should be further along now. Like, you should have X, Y, and Z. And there's tons of people that I see, too, who are younger than me, who have their crap together. And I'm just like, dang, bro, that could have been me. That could have been. Maybe should have been. But it's not. And I could very easily just be myself about it. Or I can be like, my path is my path. My journey is my journey. And I'm going to accomplish what I'm going to accomplish. And that's another thing about getting shamed, too, is that also takes away your motivation. Because then it's just like, well, there's no hope. There is always hope. You always have the power to change whatever you need to change, to handle whatever you need to handle. And if you don't feel like you have that power, then talk to somebody, reach out to somebody, a trusted friend, a trusted family member, mental health professional, meditate, seek God, read his word. And I don't mean like, because I've finally read the Bible all the way through, guys. So when I say read his word, when I went through that like really dark negative moment, I surprisingly enough was very heavy on my like Bible. And so I think I was reading a Bible plan about comparing myself to other people. And it just constantly was just like, God didn't ask you to do that because he made everybody individually. And it just kept like hammering the truth. And I kept getting like teary eyed. And I'm just like, God, I know you love me. And that's the thing too, is that no matter what you've done, God loves you. And I feel like sometimes people shy away from that because it's like, oh, well, perverts and rapists and murderers. And it's just like, yeah, the worst of the worst God loves. That's why God sent Jesus for them too. Like, he didn't just send Jesus for the people who cuss and smoke weed and drink alcohol and have premarital sex. Like, he sent Jesus Christ for everybody. And as tough as that feels, that's also really good for you, because that means that there's nothing that you can do that will send you away from God's love unless you choose to exit his love. Nothing at all. And I feel like that's what broke me finally, to be like, there's nothing I can do for my Father to not love me. And that's so like beautiful and powerful, but that also made me realize too that I need to model that. So that also goes for me being, there's nothing that I should be able to do that's, within my power and control, obviously, that should make me love myself any less. Just because I mess up, just because I don't always do everything perfectly, does not mean that I am any less worthy of love than anybody else. Wow, than anybody else on the face of this planet. Guilt and shame is really hard, but it's one of those things that you have to be intentional about. You can't just let it fester. You can't just let it grow. You can't just sit on it, suppress it, anything like that. Guilt and shame is something you're going to have to feel. You're going to have to talk out, whether that be through journaling or speaking out to other people. But that needs to be out, and you need to give yourself some grace and forgive yourself. Again, I know it's cute to say it. It's harder to do it. And I'm trying to think of like my process, because one of the things that I am really big about is writing about my feelings. I'm better at writing because I can get my thoughts together than I am at talking, but I'll still talk about it because I talk a lot. It's me, it's what I do. It's why we're here. So it's like, first I'll write about my feelings, and then I'll think about and shuffle through like, who do I want to talk about this to? And for me, it's going to be somebody that I know knows my heart and my true intentions, which is, I never want to hurt people. Like, I never want to be a burden to people. And sometimes my feelings feel like they're harmful or they can hurt people or burden people because they feel so big to me. And so I shuffle through like the people that I know, the people that I'm close to, that I love, that I'm just like, who is going to give me the gentle, like, it's okay, Jasmine, but then also the, this is what you need to do, a little kick in the pants, a nice gentle stroke and then the kick of like, this is what you need to do. So once I identify that person, then I'm like rehearsing. I'm like rehearsing, like, okay, this is what I want to say. This is what I want to say, this is how I want this to go, right? And so then I go and talk to that person, and then they're like, yeah, so you should probably be nicer to yourself. And I'm just like, isn't that always the case? Like, okay. And then I take what they said and I go back and write some more and be like, okay, this is what I thought about our interactions. And then I'm just like, okay, cool. And I guess I kind of like visualize whatever it is, and I kind of like mentally hold it. And I'm just like, I can continue holding this. This does me no good. This is not helpful in anything that I'm hoping to accomplish. Or I can separate my hands, let it fall, and walk away mentally. And so I do that, and I'm just like, okay. And then realize too that the thing about humans is we can only make the best decisions with the information that we're given in the moment. And a lot of times we get tripped up on hindsight. And it's like, oh, I could have did X, Y, and Z. Hindsight is always going to be 20/20. When you're in the moment, it's not always easy to see every single possible outcome that's probably the best outcome. You can only react how you react. So that also means that you might not have the whole picture. You might not be able to make the best decision until it's like, oh, well, this probably would have been better. Hindsight is there so that you know what to do moving forward. It's not there for you to look back and beat yourself up about it. But it's just like, okay, now that I know this, now this becomes variable. So when I scan everything and be like, what's the best possible decision? I have this hindsight to be like, oh, remember last time you didn't do this? Well, you can do this time. Because that's the thing too, is like God's gonna test you on the same thing to make sure. Like he's not just gonna test you once and be like, oh, okay, cool, Gladys is good at that, let's continue. It's gonna come back around. Sometimes a lot quicker than you think or you want. But it's gonna come back around. But you are God created you, but you are essentially, because he gave us free will, the author and creator of your life. So you can either make your story one of triumph, or we can stay where we're at. But that's up to you. And like I said in a previous video, when it comes to earth, heaven and hell is created by our minds. So we can either stay shackled to guilt and shame, we can stay self-deprecating, we can stay negative, we can stay saturated in that, or we can make the decision to start adding some positivity, start adding some happiness, some joy, some things that give you hope and meaning to live. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next Monday.